Hi, I'm Danny and I'm a senior designer here at Amtico.
Hi, I'm Emily and I'm a senior designer at Amtico.
Hi, I'm Sarah, I'm a design manager here at Amtico.
Hi, I'm Sophie and I'm a designer here at Amtico.
So Designer's Choice are a curated collection of combinations for our signature laying patterns designed by us as designers based on our research into interiors, colours and trends. They're a really easy way to bring beautiful design-led floor to our customers in a super easy and accessible way.
So Signature is our most premium collection. It has the largest range of curated products on laying patterns. So it gives the opportunity for customers to pick their own products put within their laying patterns, and it's only available in Signature. You can't do this within any other collection. So it really elevates them even further from just being beautiful products. So we as designers pick the products to select for our DCs. However, for our EPs, it gives the customers the opportunity to pick whatever product they want. So they have the freedom to select their own combinations.
And the DCs are, based on our research, we look at the whole signature range and pick the best of the best product for the best laying pattern based on trends, interior spaces, sectors, different research that we look into.
I think it's really important that we look at the application, the specific application, because scale, colour combinations and the way they work with the interiors is really important. So you wouldn't pick a large laying pattern to put in a very small space unless that was the overarching visual you wanted to give that space. So yeah, it's important to think about the application.
Yeah, so once we've established our key trends, we'll look at how these fit within the market. We'll look at how customers use the flooring within the spaces. We'll look at sort of the schemes that they're utilising and how we can make floors to fit within these. So once we have set this, we will then do a workshop style session where we'll assess the existing DC collection and we'll look at sort of what's working, maybe what's not, and reasons why they're not working. We will then collaboratively together, so imagery and product teams will work together to create combinations, but we'll always do this physically. So here's some samples I've got here. So we will always look at samples together in person because it's really difficult to tell how the colours look on screen. So we had a huge workshop. We brainstormed ideas, we were bouncing ideas off each other and sort of creating new and exciting combinations. And then once we kind of got an idea of what was working well, we would then mock these up digitally because it's always really difficult to see just small scale how something's working in a larger pattern. So we will digitally create larger overlays and maybe pop these into different spaces just to see how they're working. Some patterns might work better flooded across a space, or some might work better when they're zoned in a smaller area. We then, obviously, we're quite lucky that we've got our manufacturing teams right next to us, so we will work collaboratively with them and we will trial our favourite products just to see how these work in real life cutout patterns.
I think as designers, we often know when the design feels right, so it may be that the design is balanced, is in harmony, and it achieves the level of impact that is desired.
It's interesting that you say the level of impact desired, because in some spaces you don't want the floor to shout louder. So for instance, retail, you don't want the floor to shout louder than the clothing, but in other spaces it can really bring a full scheme together cohesively. So you're right, it needs to be dialed up and down.
And I think that's what's great about the Designer's Choice collection. Obviously, we know the signature range so well, we know these patterns so well, so it gives us kind of a good forward step into giving people the best options.
It's interesting to see how the product combination can really affect a pattern. It can give a completely different look. So say, for example, large parquet. If you have some softer toned woods together, it could give a really lovely soft feel, whereas if you give more contrasting rustics, it'll create a different aesthetic.
And I guess that's the power of LVT anyway, isn't it? With our collection, we have woods, metals, stones, and they can all be laid together, laid in the same way. It's an easier way to lay what would be natural products together.
I think we were surprised with especially the Gatsby square. So we've combined a sort of textured wood alongside a metallic burnished metal. And for us, it's not normally a combination that we play around with, but it worked beautifully for the trend we were aiming for.
Some patterns do actually make combinations more possible, you're right. This Gatsby square, it seems you can put a colour in with a stone, a metal in with a wood, a metal in with a marble, and they just work. The proportions are beautiful. It just works.
So as flooring designers, we don't just look at trends on the floors. We also have to make sure that we look at the trend across the entire interior scheme. And that's because we need to look at colour trends, material mixes, furniture and lighting. So all of that gets taken into consideration when we're looking at combining products for creating our new DCs. We have 3 new trends, one of them being restorative spaces. So this is a trend that looks at creating relaxation and wellness spaces, both residentially and commercially.
There's also nostalgic reset and soft utilitarian. So we've been tracking all 3 of those trends for a few years now, from our last signature launch, seeing how they evolve, what sectors they're being used in, what spaces, how customers are using that trend across their whole space to design a floor that fits really cohesively with it, so that we're telling the story of the whole trend.
They're all very different trends as well. They have their own identity, so it gives the opportunity for us to work out different combinations that have a really different look and feel.
And these trends also, they're not just about the visual, they're about how people behave in these spaces. So particularly as Sophie mentioned with restorative spaces, it's about how we want to make people feel in those spaces, how architects and designers are trying to create an ambience or a mood. It's really important that we suggest patterns and products that could fit in with those schemes in a calm and restorative way.
Because as an overarching trend, we've noticed that customers are going to spaces to get an experience as opposed to just going to a restaurant for a meal. They want the whole experience.
Yeah, nostalgic reset as a trend is a big advocate for that, isn't it? It's about creating those environments that feel really intimate and you go there to connect with people. So yeah, that's a really good example for that trend.
Yeah, and that trend is not just about sort of retro, typical retro either. It's about bringing the quality of heritage materials, vintage furniture, things like that. There's a lot of quality in those. So it's right that our signature collection is presenting patterns that will work in those spaces.
Yeah, for sure. Each of these 3 trends definitely crosses over commercially and residentially. We find that maybe the aesthetic might differ slightly. So soft utilitarian, for example, in commercial spaces, it's great for kind of office areas. It feels a little bit more industrial.
Where you're refurbing existing buildings, things like that.
You're using the existing architecture, the brickwork, the metal beams in old buildings. Whereas residentially, it's maybe a little bit less industrial, a bit more natural, rustic, worn wood qualities.
Softer.
Softer, yeah, generally.
We've also chosen to incorporate several of our existing DCs because we felt like they still had the look and feel that was applicable to these trends, and it was a great opportunity to sort of give them a push alongside our new DCs.
That's the thing with DC though, isn't it? It does evolve. It's like a moving feast. So as we bring out new products, we can try new combinations, but it doesn't mean that those existing combinations don't still have room to make an impact in different spaces.
We've also been able to kind of showcase some of our more long-standing products as well, and the patterns that we've brought in have really revived those and took them in a new direction that maybe we didn't think they could go in initially, which is really, really exciting.
I think the first thing you need to think about is the space you're putting it in. So the floor is a large proportion of the space. So you need to think about the setting that it's in, the interior scheme, the furniture pieces. Is it going to be a floor that you're going to zone, or will it flood the whole space? Because it can create a completely different look if you're putting a pattern in a rug feature and then pairing it with a strip wood as a field.
Yeah, you can also use the combinations and the patterns to help aid the kind of function of the space as well. So whether you're trying to direct people towards a bar area or zone some seating, or through retail shops, it can be used as kind of a functional tool as well as a beautiful tool. So then you can also elevate the combination and the pattern further by using borders, stripping, perimeters, adding in those extra level of details to finish off that space.
We see that in some of the more decorative areas in hospitality and leisure and so on, but it's also key for residential, isn't it? Because to give a classic finish to a room. Yes, you're using a designer's choice, but you can bring in that border and stripping feature to finish that space.
We've seen that being done really well in residential hallways as well, in that entrance spaces. That looks really lovely, having perimeter borders and stripping combinations.
But then that takes us straight back through to hospitality and leisure, because we often see a crossover, don't we?
Yeah.
So lobby areas, entrances to, well, it could be retail, it could be even clinics, things like that, where we're elevating that level of decoration. And that's something you can only do with Signature.
So I think if designers want to push the DCs even further, they have the option to create an EP, which is endless possibilities. They basically have the freedom to pick whatever products they want within our patterns. So they can work with combinations and different products together to create completely different look and feel.
Yeah, so it might be that somebody loves one product out of a combination, but they don't quite love the other. So they can use the endless possibilities route to change those products up. They can make it fit their scheme. They can pick certain brand colours, make it feel really kind of tailored to them. And the visualizer is a really good tool to do that with. So as we said before, it can be sometimes difficult to envision what a whole floor is going to look like. So the visualizer is a really good tool to put your combinations in on these laying patterns, to see them in a space on big scale.
And it's important to see these Signature products on a larger scale, because then you can see how the variation moves across the floor, because that's something else. We've got such a level of detail and tonality to a lot of our products, particularly the woods. When you then chop those up smaller into something like a parquet, the variation then flows a lot more. So you add in another colour into that, you've got to dial it up or down to suit. So the room visualizer is really key for experimenting in that way.
I think it's also really important that people get samples, full-size samples, to see these products together, seeing them in different lighting. Lighting plays a really key role in getting the atmosphere of a space, and it can really change how the product looks in the whole scheme. So yeah, getting samples together, seeing them in the flesh is really, really important.
And it's really important to get those full-size samples, because the products can look very different in both natural and artificial lighting, and also at different points of the day. So that's a really important thing to check.
It's also really important to look at them in the setting where the floor will be installed, because lighting in one room can differ from another. So we would always suggest looking at it in the room.
I'd definitely say that's key for residential, particularly, definitely. The other valuable thing about having a sample is you can really see the scale of the grain or the texture that you're looking at, whether it's a wood or a stone, because once they're cut up into those geometrics, you'll see different features more prominently or less prominently. So that's a really important thing to do as well. And you can see that on the visualizer, but obviously with a physical sample, it sort of comes to life.
I think what's really exciting about the endless possibilities opportunities in Signature is that people can be really brave as well. So we talk about being careful of this and thinking about that, but it also gives customers complete freedom to completely tailor something to them and make something that feels so unique.
I think it's really important, actually, and we have a bit of a laugh sometimes with standing on a combination and we're saying, oh, I can imagine myself here. But it's really important because in that moment, it's a very human thing that we're doing. We're trying to create an ambience or an experience. Experiences in hospitality, particularly, they might need to be really exciting, or they might actually need to be comforting. Just pulling on the trend that we've got, nostalgic reset, for instance. I mean, that's nostalgia. It's all about emotion. It's how you feel when you enter the space, and obviously the floor is only one part of what's responsible to make that happen. But if we can pick a pattern like Loon, for instance, and put in something like Roselle, so it's reminiscent of spaces you might have visited with grandparents, or historic buildings, things like that. It sets the scene and it puts you in the mood for a nice glass of wine or something. I don't know, but these are the sorts of conversations that we do build in. It's not just about getting samples together and thinking about what looks nice. It's about that human element, I suppose, and all of our experiences come into that. It's important.
Yeah, our roles go so much further than just making something that looks nice. That it's all about making something that's going to work, like you say, creating that whole feeling and that ambience in the space that someone's in, knowing that somebody's got to go in and experience this space, and making sure that we can work with everything else that's in that environment to get that feeling across.
And we do draw on our own experiences, but this is why we also spend time talking with our customers and visiting different spaces as well, because we can't make assumptions about how a floor or any kind of interior decoration will make someone feel. We have to go to those spaces and see and live those spaces as well. Restorative spaces is a trend I think that's particularly important with getting that feeling of calm. And I mean, obviously Danny working on the imagery, how do we then communicate that to the customers of how that floor could make them feel?
Yeah, it's always really key for us to draw on the initial concepts from the trends that we've started from when we've created the DCs, and it's quite exciting for us to be able to create very different looks in different images. So
I think it's really exciting to be able to work together as a team throughout the whole development of the products, through to the designer's choice combinations, through to the imagery, so that we can carry the initial point of the product and the direction and through to the message of that product through to the imagery, as you say. So we've got 9 new designer's choice combinations in total. 7 are tailored towards the commercial market, and 2 are more dedicated towards the residential interiors environments. Across those 9, they cross over all 3 of these trends. And like I said, some of them can be used residentially and commercially. We're seeing these trends cross over in both of those areas.
we've tried to consider scale. So residentially, obviously, spaces are a lot smaller. Some of our lane patterns don't necessarily work well in smaller spaces. So, for example, our Gatsby Square, it didn't feel natural for it to be put into a residential space. So we felt like it was more necessary to focus it in a larger commercial area.
I think it's important to consider the consumer as well. Mm-hmm. Residential customers are having to live in this space for a lot longer than somebody visiting a restaurant needs to sit in there. So it's got to be something that has potentially a little bit more longevity, feels a little bit easier to live with. Our woods are really, really popular. So our new multicolour parquets, they're a really great option for the residential market to bring in a bit of design flair in a pattern that still feels really familiar to those consumers.
What's your favourite, Sophie?
For me personally, I think my favourite is the single coloured Tay oak check design, because it's really beautiful, it's really simple, and just from using one product and changing the layout and the direction has created a really stunning effect.
And that it looks so good with the gold strip.
It really does.
And it's nice that we've never done a wood in the check pattern before, so it has really pushed it in a different direction, which I think will be a popular one.
What's yours, Donna?
I think mine is probably the large Gatsby Square, because we put two products together that we would never do before. So it is something that's slightly more metallic, so our russet burnished metal alongside Dahlia oak, which is a lovely kind of rustic textured oak. It's just different. I think it just will create a nice feeling in a space when there's a bit more impact on the floor. It's slightly geometric, but it's not too harsh. So yeah, I think Gatsby Square.
I think mine has got to be the loon with the Roselle and the Packwood stone. That colour is just beautiful. And that nostalgic reset trend, it's all about that feeling, and it's so linked to emotion. And that pattern just sings with that colour in it.
My favourite's actually the 5-colour stone parquet, because we've sort of outlined it with this really fresh strip. It gives that sort of grout effect, but it really makes it feel quite architectural, and you can really pick out the different textures and tones across the floor. It's an interesting one, that one.
I think that's a really nice example. Like mine is the favourite for Roselle because it's so impactful and there's such contrast. But the 5-colour stone shows that people don't need to go all out on the colour to have something that still feels beautiful and really considered as a design. We've done the work to kind of balance those textures.
Yeah, and even the stripping is very tonal as well, so it's a very calm, restorative floor.